Hi, we are going to read a story today. I'm in the classroom and I have our fabulous four friends here I'd like you to meet, and then two of them will help us read our story. So, some of you know these friends from last year. This is Paula Predictor. Paula Predictor likes to look at the cover of books, and she makes a prediction about what the story is going to be about. And we will talk about Paula more on another day. This is Clara Clarifier, and Clara Clarifier looks carefully at the pictures in books. She points to the words and she thinks about what makes sense. And then our two helpers for today are going to be Sammy Summarizer and Quincy Questioner. Sammy Summarizer, after he reads a book, he rounds up all the ideas and he retells the important parts and he tells them in order. So he's going to help us today. And then Quincy Questioner loves to ask questions about books, like who, what, when, where, why, how. And today he's going to ask questions about a little monkey named Curious George, because that's the book I'm going to read, and how Curious George's first day of school was like yours and how it was different. Okay, so I'll read the story. Curious George's first day of school. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George was so excited he could barely eat his breakfast. "You have a big day ahead of you, George," said his friend, the man with the yellow hat. It was a big day for George. It was the first day of school, and he had been invited to be a special helper. George and his friend walked together to the schoolyard. Some of the children were nervous, but George could not wait for the fun to begin. In the classroom, George's friend introduced him to Mr. Apple. "Thank you for inviting George to school today," said the man with the yellow hat to the teacher, and he waved goodbye. "Have a good day, George. I will pick you up after school." The children were excited to have a monkey in their class. "George is going to be a special helper, Mr. Apple told them. And what a helper he was. At story time, George held the book. At math time, the children could count on George. At recess, George made sure everyone had a ball and a well-balanced snack. After lunch, Mr. Apple got out paints and brushes. George saw red and yellow and blue paint. 3 colors were not very many. George was curious. Could he help make more colors? First, George mixed red and blue to make, do you know what color he'd made? Purple. There he is. Next, George mixed red and yellow to make orange. Then George mixed yellow and blue to make green. Finally, he mixed all the colors to make, you know what happens when you mix red, blue, and yellow? In this story, it made a big mess. There's the picture. Oh my goodness, look at Mr. Apple. The children thought the mess was funny, but Mr. Apple did not. "Oh dear," he said, "we are going to need something to clean this up. Everyone, please sit quietly while I look." George did not mean to make such a mess, and he certainly did not want to sit quietly. He wanted to help. It was his job after all, and George had an idea. In the hallway, George found a closet. In the closet, he found a bucket. And in the bucket, he found just what he needed. A mop. There he is. George was on his way back to the classroom when he heard someone yell, "Stop! Stop! What are you doing with my mop?" And he ran after George. "Stop! Stop! No running in the halls!" The principal ran after the janitor. But George was going too fast to stop. He grabbed the doorway and swung inside and sploosh! The bucket tipped, the mop dropped, and George slid across the floor. Oh no. Now the mess was even bigger, and Mr. Apple looked surprised. The principal frowned, and the janitor just shook his head. And George, poor George, he felt terrible. Maybe he was not such a good helper after all. The children felt terrible too. They did not like to see George looking so sad. They thought he was a great helper, and now they wanted to help him. So the children all lent a hand and some feet. You see what they're doing? And before anyone knew it, the mess was gone. And that little monkey sure is helpful, said the janitor. It looks like Mr. Apple has a whole class of helpers, the principal added. And at the end of the day, when George's friend arrived to pick him up, Mr. Apple said, "Thank you for all your help, George. We hope you will come and help us again." And the children cheered, and they hoped George would come again soon. George waved goodbye to his new friends. What a great day it had been. He couldn't wait to go back to school. Awesome. So, Sammy, can you tell that story again? Can you tell us the important parts? So he's going to think about it. Well, in the beginning, George was excited to go to school. But there was a problem. He made a big mess with all the paints. He wanted to help solve the problem, so he started to clean up the paints, but he made an even bigger mess. And then all his school friends decided to help him, and they cleaned up the classroom, and they were all good friends at school. The end. So Sammy didn't tell every single thing that happened. He just told the very most important parts of the book. Now I want you to think, because Quincy's going to be our main helper today. I want you to think about what was the same in Curious George's first day of school and what was the same about your first day? Not a lot. Did maybe you see some students that might be good friends someday? I hope so. We're going to make friends in our school. Now, I don't know if you know this because we're in school at home right now, but can you see that I am in the classroom? We have a classroom just like Curious George. And so hopefully we'll get to come back to school and you will have a classroom just like Curious George does. What was different? So one thing that's different is we're not in our classroom right now, are we? We're doing school from home, and George went into his classroom. What else was different? Maybe it was different because we don't have a monkey in our class, do we? Nope. And we're meeting on the computer right now, so we need to get to know each other through the computer, which makes things a little bit trickier. That makes me feel nervous, which is the same as in this book when the kids were feeling a little nervous, right? And also, I bet you all could be really good helpers, like Curious George and his friends. You can help Mrs. Stalka by following directions on the computer and doing your very best. I'm really glad you're all in my class, and I look forward to getting to know you better. Thank you for reading with me. Bye.